So as some of y'all know, I own this nice, beautiful coffee shop. Beautiful. I mean, look at this. Isn't this a beautiful coffee shop? Don't you just want to come, sit, drink some coffee, talk, do all that other stuff? Okay, but that's not what we're here for. So there's a good chance that my coffee shop might actually be haunted. And I know what you're thinking right now, like how convenient, you're a paranormal creator, you do history content. Of course you think your coffee shop is haunted, but hear me out. The town that I'm in, Opelika, is very old. More specifically, the part of town that I'm in, downtown Opelika, is one of the oldest parts in this entire county. Adjacent to us is a railroad system that's famously known to be a part of Rousseau's raid. On top of that, this building was built around the 1880s, 1890s. And it's pretty much seen anything that Opelika has had to offer since it was built. So let's actually get to the haunted part. In the first couple weeks that I bought this shop, I was sitting right here. This is where I used to sit. This was my favorite spot. It still kind of is. I would always hear something right there in the corner. What it was, I never knew, but it sounded like crinkling plastic. And, you know, no big deal. Like, I'm a very logical, skeptical person. So I immediately looked up and said, it's gotta be something going on with the vents right there. But lo and behold, it wasn't, and here's why. So here's the thing. As I sit in the seat right now, the crinkling plastic sound sounded like it was going directly into my ear right here. And so every time it happened, I'd turn around and I'd look, but it would still be there. And I could not figure out what that sound was. And lo and behold, I was talking to one of my baristas the other day, and she told me that she heard this same crinkling sound in the same spot. And it's not just one of those occurrences that happened one time. This happened consistently. And if you look straight ahead, this is where I saw what I believe to be a shadow figure twice. So if you look there, we have our roaster in the back. There's some things on the shelves, but you know, I tried to debunk it the first time. And obviously there's a reflection that comes from the front of the shop. We have some big, huge windows. Look, you can see that right there. We have big, huge windows. It comes from the front of the shop. Also, again, here's the thing. The second time, I have locks, as you know. I pulled my hair back, and the second time I saw it, and this was just ironic because this just happened to be a day that I had my locks pulled back. I was standing actually pretty close this time, and I saw what I could only say was a head and a neck peek out from around the window, look at me, and put its head back in. So immediately I look behind me because at this point, you know, I've been doing this for a while. This does not scare me. I'm just trying to problem solve it at this point. I look around and there's nothing going on, and there's nothing that could have caused a deep, dark mass. This happened to me twice. This case right here, I physically have seen something walk across this case while I was literally minding my own business, closing one day. I open and close by myself all the time. One morning around 6:40, 6:45-ish, I was sitting here, I was counting the register, I was halfway done. I was getting ready for us to open the shop, and not only do I hear footsteps come from the office door back here, right? But I hear the footsteps come all the way to the counter. Nobody's here. It wasn't our neighbor. Our neighbors weren't here at all. And I physically heard those sounds walking on our floor to the counter. I was doing a TikTok live in here a few short nights later, and I have TikTok followers who can verify this exact event because I was on the live with them, and they heard this, and they were actually telling me things. And I was telling them about a story that I will get to in a second about how I think we have a ghost in here. Probably the most prominent story, the one that's, you know, probably the most compelling outside of like, oh, I think I've heard things and footsteps and things. I was talking to them, and that same set of footsteps would come from this office right here, and it would follow our floor all the way to the counter. And I was shocked, and I literally said to them, wait, did y'all hear that? Because what I heard was this. And it came to this counter right here, and you know, I just had this experience happen not even a couple of days ago. So now I'm like, okay, we got some stuff going on in here. And so I immediately, you know, divert to talking about some of the other experiences that I've had in here. And it was at this point that my TikTok live people, the people who were on the TikTok live with me, started actually pointing out noises that ramped up while I was on that live. And that's one of the craziest experiences that I've had, while openly acknowledging that, you know, there's a good chance we might not be alone in here. And so knocks were coming from different parts of the building. in front of me, beside me, around me, across the room. And people could physically hear this because they were actually pointing out some of these sounds to me. And these weren't sounds that I was telling them were happening. These were sounds that I was not telling them at all. So they were telling me things that I heard that I was just ignoring. They were like, did you hear that knock? Did you hear that knock? And I did hear the knock. And so a bunch of knocking and noises and creaks started happening in here. And granted, this is an old building, but knocks and creaks and noises never happen on command. And the floor only controls the floor, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, that happened. I've also had several people tell me that they didn't feel alone in this building. And there are times where for some reason you'll be in the back and you're halfway done, and even up here in the front, and you just get that feeling, you know what I mean? And it could be just the energy of people coming to the city and the downtown area. It just usually happens when it's closing, when everything's shut off, and you can kind of really get in tune with your senses. But it is noticeable. This is a coffee shop, so obviously we go through a ton of milk. This one time we bought more than we needed. We were preparing for something, and we just had a surplus. And so we ended up having to waste 2 gallons of milk. So I took those 2 gallons of milk away from here. I sat them in the back of our office in a place where nobody ever goes. I didn't have to worry about anybody accidentally grabbing them or anything. I sat them far away so that I did not forget them and I could throw them out at the end of the shift. Well, I ended up forgetting, so they stayed there. Yeah, so embarrassing moment for me. But nonetheless, my wife was actually the one who pointed it out because she discovered the things of milk. That's how little we use this area, that I would forget them and not even know to come back to this area. And this was a couple of days later, so also embarrassing moment for me. Never has happened again, I can guarantee you that, because of this specific reason. You know, with those plastic milk cartons, they bust when they've, gotten really hot, they expand, they bust. So we had milk all over the floor. And my wife was like, I'm not picking this up, it stinks back here, you need to come and get this. So she came and got me from the front and said, clean up your mess. And I was like, what are you talking about? She was like, this mess. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that's my bad. And so I went to go grab the 2 gallons of milk. There is a footprint in the milk, a footprint, and not just any kind of footprint, a boot print. There is a boot print halfway out of this door. Okay, you see how there's this crack? This is where the door is. And I'm gonna really spell it out because this was crazy. And she said, is that a boot print? And I said, yes, it is. And I just sat here staring at it because I could not believe what I was seeing. Never in my life have I ever seen ghost prints, phantom prints, whatever you want to call it. And this is the first time I've actually shown this in general. There was a footprint that was halfway out of the door. The best way I can describe it is as if I put my foot in an L like this and then put it right here. And the front half of my foot was sticking out like I stepped through the door. So the rest of the print would have been in the wood. And I literally sat here for what had to be 10 minutes staring at this boot print because I was trying to figure out how in the world it appeared in that spot, considering that the milk had not been moved. There were no milk trail marks or anything. Nobody even wears boots in here because, for one, it's a coffee shop and they were combat boots. So I was thoroughly surprised because what the heck is going on around here? And I have yet to see anything like that. I've yet to duplicate that. I don't even know how to duplicate something like that. It's as if somebody stepped in between the wood, the door, and on halfway on the floor. So the question after all this is this coffee shop haunted? And to be honest, I can't really say yes, but I definitely can't say no. With everything that I've said, what do y'all think? And also, do you have stories about your workplace being haunted? If so, please tell me because I would love to hear them. And I'm sure a lot of other people would too.